So this is quite a condensed ladder of aggression. We actually haven't got everything on there because actually under here you would have your baseline, and your baseline is a calm dog, a dog in the parasympathetic nervous system. And I know people that work with me have heard me talk about that quite a lot. So the parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest. It's when the dog feels very comfortable, very calm, able to eat, able to take treats. When they get up the ladder, one of the first things you'll see is they'll stop wanting food. So in the baseline, you'll see a dog that has a very loose, wiggly demeanour. They'll have a helicopter tail, they'll have soft eyes, they'll have nice, even breathing. It won't all be panty through the mouth. They'll be able to breathe through their nose as well. They'll stand in a very neutral posture, and you'll see that they're able to move very, very fluidly. And they cannot skip from that state, that parasympathetic, straight into the sympathetic. The sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems they cannot run at the same time. Sympathetic nervous system is your fight and your flight when they get further up the ladder. So before you even get to that little bit of green on that ladder on the screen, you will see a dog that is just chill, just finished a yoga class, feeling good about themselves, have slept well, have eaten well, have had the right amount of enrichment, and is just very, very, very happy. When you get to this bit here, this is your subtle stress indications and what we call calming signals. We miss these a lot. This is where it can go very, very wrong, particularly when we're doing things like putting harnesses on, brushing teeth, grooming dogs. Were you staring at me? we can really miss these signals. So what the dog is trying to tell you is, I'm starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable, Mum. I'm not 100% happy in this environment. So you might see a bit of lip licking, and that's nothing to do with the fact that they're eating. You might see yawning. That doesn't mean they're tired. It means they're trying to get air to the brain and into the system. They're releasing pressure in their jaw. You might see their heads turn away. So they'll do this. That's something that dogs will do to other dogs to say, I'm not interested. You'll see them do that. And actually, if you're working with a reactive dog or a scared dog, or you're meeting a dog for the first time, it's a good idea to be sideways on and to turn your head away from the dog, rather than go, all right, you okay, fine, because that's very threatening to a dog. You might see them start to sniff the ground, and this is why I often will teach a drop to get dogs' noses down very quickly. So sniffing the ground is a calming posture for the dog, but it also, again, tells other dogs that they're not particularly interested. But it's a displacement, it's a way that a dog goes, nothing to see here, there's nothing to see here. So you'll see that when they start to get uncomfortable. They will avoid eye contact, they'll move very slowly, they will curve their body away, which is another reason why I say be sideways on if you ever see an aggressive or reactive dog, or a dog that is scared. And they will pause and hesitate. They'll do stuff very, very mindfully. They are doing this because they're polite. They're doing this because they want to de-escalate a situation. They do this because dogs are pacifists, and that goes for most breeds. What they aren't are signs of guilt. Lots of people will say, well, my dog knew they'd done wrong. They looked guilty. They're not... They don't work like that. They're not remembering that they read on the carpet. They're not associating that with your behaviour. Your behaviour of being cross because they've done something that you didn't want them to do will trigger these responses of discomfort, because they'll pick up on your hormones, your tone, your body language. So they're responding to the change in you, which is why punishment doesn't work, because you're just making the dog scared of you. Rung 2 on here, we're getting there guys, don't worry. This is avoidance and displacement. This is the dog saying, oh, I don't want to be part of this, I've got to get away, I've got to move away. But they won't do that quickly because that could prompt a predatory response, that could promote them being chased. So what they'll do is they'll slowly move away. They might hide behind furniture, they might hide under the bed, they might hide behind their owner, they might freeze and then move. So you see a lot of freezing behaviours. They may sit or lie down. So a lot of times when we say, oh, the dog's really happy because they roll over for us to tickle their tummy, that's not always a sign that they want their tummy tickled. There's two very different body languages with that. If a dog's on their back and they're waggling all four paws in the air, that's a comfortable dog. But if they're a bit stiff and they're looking at you out the corner of their eye and you get that whale eye effect and they've still got two limbs stuck to the floor, don't tickle their tummy. They're looking for space, they're looking to be able to move away, they're looking to ask you to give them a bit of space. They may start scratching, they might start sniffing, again to say there's nothing to see here. They might stare at a pigeon. They might become totally absorbed in the environment rather than the thing that they're trying to avoid. I see that sometimes in training when people are asking their dog to do something and the dog doesn't quite understand. The dog might scratch or the dog might go, there's something over here that's really interesting, and they totally disengage. So that's avoidance and displacement. It's really important that we listen to these, because if we tighten the lead of a reactive dog, if we block their view, or if we lean under a table to try and get a dog out from under the table, this is when things escalate. This is when things go a bit bananas. And we get up to here. So the next rung is your freeze and your stiffening. This is a hugely dangerous rung. And if we miss this, we're in big trouble. But this is very much stop. I cannot cope. This is just not happening. Their body will go very still. They might tense up. They might give a very hard fixed stare. Their weight might shift forwards as if to run, or it might go backwards because they're going to go the other way, or they're going to launch. They may be very still, and you may see a very stiff tail wag. Again, people will say to me, but he was wagging his tail, he was fine. No, there's so many different ways to wag your tail, and you can't just watch the tail, you've got to watch the whole body. So if the tail's doing this, that's not a happy dog. If it's doing that, and everything, that's my phone, and everything's wiggling, then that is a happy dog. But if you think about it, can you turn it off? If you think about trying to do any of that, if you imagine your muscles tensing, if you imagine trying to shift your weight, if you imagine trying to communicate with your tail, and anything in your skeletal system is sore, how are you going to communicate any of that properly or without it causing you pain? And if you're doing that and it hurts, you'll bang right up the top of the ladder. So many bites can happen after this stage, and then lo and behold, you get to the top of the rung where you get your vocalization, you get your visual warnings. These signals are very clear, very intentional, and guess what? They're the ones we notice. They're the ones we go, oh dear. But by the time that dog growls, snarls, lifts their lip, shows their teeth, air snaps, lunges, the dog is so at the end of their tether. And the main point here is, if we are punishing our dog's growling, number one, bad on us because we've missed all this. But number two, what if they stop? What if they give up? What if they give up growling and they go straight from 0 to 60? I've said they can't go from their parasympathetic. They will kind of go through here and then they'll elevate straight up to the top of that ladder. And they'll snap, they'll bite. You'll see very, very clear aggressive and sustained aggression. What's really scary is that if a dog goes through that enough, they'll learn not to bother. They'll learn not to bother because from experience, protecting myself, none of this other communication worked. Frustration will drive them up the ladder as well. You know, they will try harder and harder and harder to get their point across. And many of you that have worked with me, you know, dolphin trainer. Frustration makes the dolphin jump higher. Frustration makes the dolphin jump higher. So, next slide, please.
Oh, sorry, can I ask two?
Yeah, go for it.
How about like shaking?
Shaking, that's a great
There's
question.
another one really does often is like one paw up.
Okay, yeah, that's cute, yeah. So that one paw up is kind of a little bit, I'm going to chase it. It can be quite, can be playful, it can be pretty. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's communication. If it's in a stressful situation, then it is a precursor to running at the thing, to basically create space. If I run at you, you know, you'll move, and then I've created space for myself. Lots of dogs will run at something and go, and then run away. Again, it's all designed to create space. Dogs work on thresholds. You know, so I'm always saying how close is too close, how loud is too loud, and that sort of thing. And the shaking, that's another really, so that's all about, there's two reasons for that. One reason is to disperse adrenaline. So if a dog has kind of had a scary or an unnerving experience, obviously all the adrenaline builds up. And that stays in the dog system for about 2 hours. But if they shake, it can disperse it throughout the body. So that's one reason they do that. Another reason they might do that is when they go from one environment to another. So they will have collected scent molecules and absorbed some of the environment. And as they go into a new environment, they may shake to disperse all of those molecules so that they're then able to absorb the new environment.
Okay, so it doesn't really mean super nervous.
It means, it can mean, that was a bit worrying, that was a bit scary, got to get rid of all that adrenaline, and they just sort of loosen themselves up a bit. Clear face. So sorry.
So is it like human shaking? It's not like sometimes when you go to somewhere like a bit nervous, shake it off.
Yeah, you might go, oh,
yeah,
yeah, oh,
like
yeah, a little
you're
bit.
trying to distress yourself. That's kind of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's used to that.
Okay.
Sinkist, I'm doing that at the moment. Right, okay. So, anyone else got any questions? All good, okay, cool. So, pain shortens the ladder. Dogs will skip earlier runs. Their threshold will be lower. Their reactions will become very kind of, well, they'll appear very sudden, but they're not, okay? It just means that they can't take as much on board. They can't deal with quite as much. Punishing, as I've said before, really removes their communication, but not the risk. But what I wanted to kind of touch on was, do we actually know what punishment is for our dogs? I've got a very sweet girl who trains with us, and whenever she wants to praise her dog, she will just go, well done, bang, bang. That she thinks she's loving that dog and giving it praise. I've talked to her about this. You know, loving that dog and giving it praise, but actually that's punishing. You know, so you've got to be really careful. You know, when we think we're praising a dog or being tactile out of love, are we punishing? Particularly if that dog has a pain issue. So I just wanted to make that little point. So sometimes it's not a case that the dogs are skipping the runs, it's a case that we're not seeing them. We're not seeing those subtle signs. If a dog is not getting enough sleep, they will miss a lot of runs as well, because sleep affects pain, pain affects sleep. If a dog has suffered fear or trauma, they will learn that the subtle signs don't work, and their defensive responses will appear much sooner. This is actually why, and Aura will probably know this, that when people come to me with reactivity or behaviour issues, the first thing I do is put in management. So we create an environment where the dog can't do the behaviours we don't want them to do. And many people, not all of them, but many people will feel that we're not addressing the main issues because we're stopping them from happening. They'll be like, well, how are we going to work on this if you're not going to let this reactivity even take place? What we're doing there is we are stopping rehearsals of that behaviour because we want the dog to learn to be able to communicate further down the ladder. So if we put management in place, they can't practice them, and those behaviours can't become permanent. And they can't practice just running up the ladder straight to the top. Common myths that we really need to kind of be busting here are, the bite came out of nowhere. Basically, the warnings were missed. Growling is a bad behaviour. No, growling is communication. He knows better. No. Stress and pain is overriding the learning. And what comes with that is cortisol. And cortisol, as you will probably know, is a stress hormone. And cortisol stops the dog learning on a cellular level. It literally prevents the brain from making new connections. So it's very important to understand that. So it's our job really to notice those early rungs of the ladder. We need to respond before we see escalation. We need to make sure that the dog isn't practicing that escalation through management. And we can really tell a lot about what's going on with that dog through static assessment. And we can be watching for subtle changes in movement every day. So what might you be looking at? When a dog is uncomfortable or painful, you'll see that their baseline for tolerance is much lower, their margin for error in our mind is much smaller. Dogs don't think they're doing anything wrong. The rat is always right in behavioural science. The rat does what helps the rat to survive. Like I said, they might start higher on the ladder. You might miss signs of pain and jump straight in thinking they're reactive, they won't handle us handling them or touching them, and they've got behavioural problems. Instead of, this dog is halfway up the ladder because they're in pain. Linking posture to that ladder of communication will allow you to explain why they suddenly appear to snap. It's not sudden. Why punishment or restraint, tight lead, escalates the risk of reactivity or a risk of behaviour you don't want, or a bite or a redirected bite onto you. It might explain why some dogs appear stoic and then suddenly they bite, and also why pain cases often show a suppressed level of signalling, i.e. you don't see what's going on with the dog because they're too busy hiding that pain. So we need to make sure that we keep owners and handlers safe. We need to make sure that we're not labelling dogs all the time. We're very good at labelling dogs unfairly. Well, he's just a bit quirky, like I said before. He's a bit of he can't learn, he's a bit thick, he's a bit stubborn. All those labels are really not fair.